The day before the wedding, my fiancé killed the dog I had raised for 10 years for his new love. The next day, the long-anticipated wedding of the Liu family's prince was set to take place, but the bride ran away. When Leo found me at the airport, he frowned in confusion. "It was just a dog that was killed, why are you making such a big deal out of it? If you leave, don't ever think about coming back in this lifetime." I gave him a weary glance and resolutely chose to leave. But what no one expected was that within a year, the Liu family's always proud prince would one day bow his head and kneel on the ground, hoping that his unwed fiancée would return to his side once more. Lucky is dead. When I received its body, the box emitted a terrible stench, indicating that it had been dead for quite some time. I felt a bit dazed. I remembered what Lucky looked like when he first came to my house. Since my parents passed away when I was young, Lucky was the only family I had by my side. He was always well-behaved and sensible, waiting for me to come home every day, panting in the empty house. He kept watch for me for 10 years. I thought Lucky would be with me until I got married, watching me put on the most expensive wedding dress, marrying the person I loved the most, seeing me become the happiest couple with him. But now Lucky has turned into a cold corpse. The most ironic part is that he was brought to me by the person I loved the most, and it was he who called someone to kill him in cold blood. I trembled with my hands, and in the end, I still didn't have the courage to open the box. I felt weak and collapsed to the ground. Tears streamed down my face, and I began to cry out loud. How could Leo be so cruel? How could he? I have never truly seen this man, nor have I ever recognized the cold-blooded cruelty that lay within him. I am already disheartened. Leo happened to send a message at that moment. "Rachel, if you can't manage your dog not to bite people, for the sake of safety after marriage, I will have no choice but to kill it." This time it was just a lesson. I handled this matter this way only to give Sophie an explanation. "Remember, our wedding is tomorrow, so prepare well." I scoffed a few times. Leo killed Lucky, and he still thinks I would marry him? A few days ago, Sophie was unhappy about my marriage to Leo and came to my house to cause a scene. She nearly pushed me down the stairs. Lucky sensed something was wrong and kept barking. It desperately bit onto her sleeve, allowing me to narrowly escape a disaster. The cries attracted the neighbors, who immediately called the police. But in front of the officers, Sophie turned the tables. She curled up, sobbing and claiming that Lucky had bitten her. When Leo arrived at the police station, Sophie immediately threw herself into his arms, putting on a pitiful little flower act. But at that moment, I couldn't be bothered to argue with Sophie. I thought that Leo, whom I knew well, would naturally not believe such nonsense. It has been several days since I got home, and Lucky still hasn't returned. I only realized something was wrong when I wanted to look for him, but it was already too late. From the very beginning, I was wrong. I was wrong in not clarifying my own position. I was merely in a marriage with him, and it was my unwavering love for him over the years that blinded me. I thought he was at least someone who could distinguish right from wrong. It is only now that I have suddenly awakened to the truth. He is not at all as good as I imagined. The Leo who used to protect me has long since changed. It was my foolishness that completely led to the death of Lucky, the only one who loved me in this world. I buried Lucky under the big tree in the backyard of my ancestral home. It's cool there, and there are often stray cats and dogs coming by to look for fruit to eat. Lucky has always enjoyed the hustle and bustle. Then, I booked a flight to the southern city. I quietly packed my luggage. Leo opened his phone again, but I chose not to answer. "Have you prepared for tomorrow's matters?" I replied. His messages kept refreshing on the screen. I took a deep breath, feeling increasingly nauseous. The Qing family and the Liu family have been close for generations. Behind our backs, the adults arranged a betrothal between Leo and me since we were little. Who would have thought that a car accident would take my parents away? On the day they were buried, the Liu family came to pay their respects. At that time, the young Leo held me in his arms, who was on the verge of crying to the point of fainting, and kept comforting me. "Don't cry, Sister Rachel. From now on, my mom will be your mom, and my dad will be your dad." His voice was strong and powerful, nothing like that of a child. I stared at him blankly. He entered my life like a hero. From that moment on, I developed different feelings for Leo. He gave me my first gift, which was Lucky. The arrival of Lucky filled my home with warmth. From then on, he and Lucky have always been there to protect me. From middle school to university, whenever I was bullied, Leo would stand up for me. When I was mocked as an orphan, he would beat them up until they were left searching for their teeth. Everyone believed that Leo and I would definitely end up together. Until his parents told him that I would marry him and become his wife. He has always been rebellious, disliking the suffocating control his parents had over him for years, and even more so the arranged marriage they had set for him. Moreover, he has always seen me merely as a sister. Leo's life has been predetermined by his parents, and this time is no different. But he wanted to live for himself just once. So at that moment, he developed the idea of wanting to escape the marriage. He grabbed my hand and said with great anticipation, "Rachel, as long as the two of us escape the engagement together, my parents won't be able to force us to be together." But I hesitated. In the end, out of selfishness, I chose not to escape. His initial hope turned into disappointment. "So it turns out you are in cahoots with them, Rachel. I really misjudged you." From that day on, he never treated me kindly again. Until Sophie appeared. Leo met Sophie while drowning his sorrows at the bar. He was unhappy about the impending engagement, yet felt helpless and could only turn to alcohol for solace. When I found Leo at the booth with a frown, Sophie was already nestled in his arms, and he was nuzzling her nose. I forced myself to stand in front of Leo, suppressing the pain inside. "Leo, let's go home. Get lost." He didn't even glance at me. "Auntie is very worried about you." He looked up at me, but his gaze was filled with disgust, making me catch my breath. "Rachel, what are you pretending to be a good person for?" A wave of bitterness surged in my heart. "Leo, I want to marry you because you are the only one I trust in this world." The enormous inheritance left by my parents has made various families covetous. Over the past few years, countless families have come to my home to propose to me. How could I not know their intentions? After hesitating for a moment, I decided to express what was on my mind. I looked at him with hopeful anticipation. "Leo, you are the only one who truly cares for me, so I hope to marry you. Will you give me a home? A home that belongs only to the two of us. Do you really not have the slightest bit of affection for me?" His gaze towards me was filled with confusion. Just as I was about to muster the courage to take his hand and leave, Sophie interrupted everything. Her expression was cautious. "You must be Miss Rachel, right? A few days ago, when I first met Leo, he mentioned you, saying that you were the fiancé that the Liu family had arranged for him long ago. I'm really sorry today for you to see Leo act this way towards me. He only did this because he drank too much. Normally, Leo and I wouldn't be this close, so please don't misunderstand." Leo's gaze suddenly turned cold. "What are you explaining to her? She was arranged by my mom. It's not like I can't marry anyone else. I don't need her to manage me. Come on, let's keep drinking." Sophie, with just a few words, provoked Leo's anger. Leo took her and left. Before leaving, Sophie looked at me, her expression thoughtful. After that day, Leo never showed up again. His Facebook was filled with wild parties every day, but Sophie was always by his side. Our mutual friend secretly told me that Sophie spread many rumors about me. Then she cleverly let Leo overhear these rumors. For example, I supposedly hired someone to beat up Sophie to force Leo into marriage. And that my purpose in marrying Leo was not love, but to gradually swallow the Liu family's wealth. Leo believed her lies step by step, and he grew to loathe me immensely. He began to avoid seeing me and instead spent every day with Sophie. Other friends who tried to dissuade him were met with his retorts. "You are all blinded by Rachel's sweet talk. How can you not see that she is just a scheming green tea bitch? Since you all dislike Sophie, you don't need to be friends with me anymore." Sophie weakly hid in his arms, laughing as if a petty person had succeeded. This matter quickly reached Leo's mother. "Rachel, Leo is just sulking with us, don't be upset, I'll call that little brat back to apologize to you right now." I forced a smile. "Auntie, since Leo is unwilling, let's just forget about this marriage." "That won't do, I promised your parents that I would take good care of you. Moreover, compared to those misfits out there, Leo can only marry you, and we would feel at ease." Without saying a word, Leo's mother immediately cut off his card. Before long, Leo reluctantly returned home. Leo's father was furious. "You are not allowed to go out until you marry Rachel. Otherwise, I will consider you no longer my son." Leo looked at me with eyes full of resentment. "Rachel, you really are something." He left this sentence and went upstairs. Leo's mother held my hand, her face a bit haggard. "One day, this brat will understand who truly cares for him. Rachel, promise me you won't give up on him, okay?" I nodded with difficulty. "But I really am so tired. Leo doesn't love me, can we really be happy in this kind of marriage?" At the engagement ceremony, Lucky was by my side, its gaze towards Leo filled with hostility. Meanwhile, Leo's expression remained indifferent, as if he were not attending his own wedding. He put a diamond ring on my finger. But the words he whispered in my ear were cold and piercing. "Rachel, I will never like you. Never." After the engagement, our relationship remained as fragile as ice. He spoiled Sophie to no end, and everyone could see it. I wanted to let go, but Leo's father and mother had done so much for me that it felt like a debt I could never repay. In a fit of anger, Leo's mother went to Sophie's company and demanded the manager fire her. This, of course, ignited Leo's fury. He came home and had a huge argument. During that argument, Leo's father suffered a heart attack and was hospitalized. His health deteriorated day by day, and he planned to step down and hand the company over to Leo. The condition was that Leo must marry me. Leo wants to make the heart of the Liu family clear as day. Only by taking control of the company can he free himself from his parents' constraints and keep Sophie by his side. Meanwhile, Leo's mother has been pleading with me to marry Leo without fail. So Leo agreed to marry me. From our engagement until today, Leo and I have been tormenting each other for a year. Throughout this year, only Lucky has been by my side. Whenever I cried late at night, it was also Lucky who licked my cheeks. It didn't want me to be sad. Over the years, Lucky has been my source of joy. In my life, apart from Leo, there was only Lucky. But now, Lucky is gone. The boy who once said he would always protect me has also died in my heart. After I packed my luggage, I took one last look at my phone's wallpaper. It was a photo of me and Leo from our high school graduation. The boy smiled exuberantly, while I stood in front of him, shy and well-behaved. He was half a head taller than me, playfully making rabbit ears with his hands. I changed the wallpaper to a plain white one. Leo's messages kept popping up. "Isn't this the wedding you've been dreaming of? Why are you disappearing now? Rachel, I can't wait to see what you plan to do tomorrow." Out of sight, out of mind, I simply turned off my phone. Before leaving, I went to check on Lucky under the big tree. I gently stroked the dirt covering him. "Lucky, thank you for taking care of me all these years. I have to go now, I can no longer stay with you. Will you blame me? Forgive me for not protecting you well, I'm sorry, Lucky, I'm sorry." I wiped my tears and took one last deep look. There are too many memories for me in the North City, but it is time to leave. The South City is a good place. I hope my life will start anew there. The next day, the wedding began, and Leo called, but I ran away from the wedding. The highly anticipated wedding of the Liu family's young master and the Qing family's young lady ultimately ended in chaos with the young lady fleeing. The news was reporting this incident everywhere. Leo lost all his face. He kept searching for my whereabouts, wanting to find me to settle the score. Meanwhile, I was already at the airport, sipping coffee in the VIP lounge. The news report came through the headphones. What courage it takes to abandon everything and choose to leave. Hearing someone call my name, I looked up. The man was dressed in a trench coat, which accentuated his figure perfectly. His features were also handsome, and at that moment he stood in front of me, half smiling. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" Ethan is a college classmate of Leo and also the young master of the Fu family. However, he has always had a good relationship with Leo, so I naturally wouldn't show a good face to Leo's friends. "If you want to tell Leo I'm here, feel free." The man raised an eyebrow. "Why would I tell him?" "Suit yourself. I don't want to waste any more words on him and plan to have someone change my lounge." Ethan chuckled lightly. "Rachel, we're on the same flight, and there are only the two of us in this business class. If you don't mind, why don't we sit together and keep each other company?" Ethan's words sounded as if he had been planning this for a long time, but I wasn't interested in keeping company with Leo's friend. He lowered his voice. "Rachel, it seems you have some misunderstandings about me. My relationship with Leo isn't very close, and I only know him because—" "Rachel." A furious voice interrupted Ethan's words. Leo barged into the VIP lounge, disregarding the staff's attempts to stop him. His eyes were filled with raging fury. "Rachel, do you dare to play me?" I frowned. "Leo, even if you're going crazy, you should consider the occasion. Don't embarrass Aunt and Uncle here." The other guests in the VIP room secretly raised their phones. After all, Grandpa Leo just made the trending list. Who doesn't know what he looks like? "Rachel, it was you who used every means to make me marry you. What kind of game are you playing here, pretending to be coy, and you even dare to run away from the wedding? Do you have any regard for the Liu family?" Leo tightened his grip on my wrist, trying to force me to leave. "Now go back and get our marriage done." "Let go of me." I used all my strength to break free. I curled my lips. "Leo, isn't your greatest wish for me to roll as far away as possible? Now I'm fulfilling your wish." He was stunned. Ethan chimed in from the side. "Yeah, Leo. I really think Rachel is planning to let you go. Why are you still here being so stubborn? Go find Sophie. She's been crying all day because of your wedding and has come down with a high fever, even threatening to jump out of the hospital." Only then did Leo notice Ethan. He asked in confusion, "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Ethan shrugged. "Just by chance, I was on the same flight as Rachel. We can talk about Sophie later." Leo impatiently interrupted and continued to ask, "Rachel, I just want to know, why did you run away from the wedding?" I retorted, "How strange, you ran away, so what? Would you, Leo, really care about that?" His emotions calmed down a bit, and he frowned in confusion. "It's not because of that dog, is it?" My expression was gloomy. "You have no right to mention Lucky. You just killed a dog, and you think you can escape the marriage? Let me be clear, if you leave, you can forget about coming back for the rest of your life." He spoke with conviction. "No matter how much you plead, it won't work on my mom." I said weakly, "Don't worry, I will never come back in this lifetime." I thought that after saying this, Leo would be overjoyed. But his expression stiffened for a moment, and finally, gritting his teeth, he said fiercely, "Don't regret it." With that, he turned and left. After he left, Ethan turned to me seriously. "Rachel, a person like Leo is not worth your sadness." I forced a smile. "I'm not sad." He was silent for a moment. "Your smile looks worse than crying." It is indeed quite difficult to give up someone I've liked for over 10 years. I paused, then said firmly, "But I will move forward and forget everything from the past." Ethan paused. "Then I hope you can achieve what you wish." Just before boarding the plane, I opened my phone. I received a message from Leo's mother. "Child, I am sorry for not considering your feelings. All along, I knew you were unhappy, yet I still held you captive, hoping you would be with my son. Seeing you run away from the wedding, to be honest, Auntie felt happy. I also hope you will live well in the future, so that I do not let down your parents' wishes." My tears flowed uncontrollably once again. Ethan sat beside me and handed me a handkerchief. With trembling hands, I sent my last message. "Auntie, thank you for all these years. In fact, I always knew that Leo's mother wanted me to marry Leo, also because of my parents' inheritance. But no matter which wealthy heir I marry, these assets would only be an added advantage for them. I never expected that in the end, Leo's mother would also choose to respect my wishes and let me go. Over the years, she has genuinely cared for me and raised me. In my eyes, Leo's mother is like a second mother. After calming down, I said to Ethan, "Thank you for your handkerchief. But speaking of which, why are you here? Don't tell me it's fate that brought you on this plane. I have never believed in fate." Ethan suddenly reached out and wiped away the tears I hadn't managed to clean from the corners of my eyes. There were some indescribable emotions in his eyes. "Rachel, before you got married, I wanted to tell you that you owe no one anything, you should live for yourself. But the moment I saw you running away from the wedding, I realized those words no longer needed to be said, you had already done that. So I came here, wanting to go to South City with you. You can treat me like heir or anything else, I just want to be with you." I was stunned and asked, "Do you like me?" We had no prior connection, the only intersection being that day when you and Leo participated in the basketball game, and I happened to buy you a cup of water. He smiled slyly and said, "Maybe it was that day when I fell in love with you at first sight?" Ethan's thoughts were laid bare, but I was no longer in the mood to start a new relationship. He said he could wait for me forever. I thought he was joking. After all, I never believed in such promises. No one waits for another person for a lifetime. After arriving in South City, I quickly took care of everything. I bought a new villa and renovated it nicely. Ethan bought a house next to mine and became my neighbor. He gave me a dog. "It will accompany you in the future, just like Lucky." "How do you know about Lucky?" "Ethan seems to know me very well. I attended your engagement party and could tell how much you love that dog by your side, so I asked Leo about it." He smirked, "I've had a crush on you for many years, and now I finally have a chance. Don't you want me to show off a little?" I was amused by his playful demeanor. "You certainly have a way with words. Let's give it a name. How about Jeff?" Amidst our laughter, I felt a shadowy gaze watching us from a distance. I couldn't help but shiver. But when I looked back, there was no one around. I never expected to see Sophie a second time in this lifetime. While I was trimming the flowers and plants in the yard, she approached me. When I opened the door and saw her, I almost shut it again, but she stopped me. Her eyes were filled with resentment. "I know what you were thinking when you ran away from the wedding, you just wanted Leo to remember you, right?" She sneered, "You've probably heard some rumors these past few days and are secretly pleased with yourself. But don't worry, I won't let you succeed, you might as well give up on that hope." I found it quite amusing to look at her. "If you're sick, go to the hospital. You flew all the way from the North City just to say this to me? You must be really bored, why not find a job instead? You." She shouted at me, pointing her finger at my nose, "Do you know? I've already told Leo all about your filthy deeds. You and Leo will never reconcile in this lifetime." "Filthy deeds? I have always acted with integrity, unlike you. How much effort did you put into slandering me behind my back, constantly insinuating to Leo that I was scheming? I am not unaware of it. The only reason you can stand here in one piece is that I have been accommodating you." I spoke casually, my eyes filled with sarcasm towards her. "As for the future, just be a good Mrs. Liu. Don't act like a mad dog, biting indiscriminately." Sophie was so furious that she became incoherent, unable to speak for a long time. In a fit of anger, she stormed off. I muttered, "What a mystery. Who made you unhappy?" Ethan appeared at my yard gate without me noticing. A madman came and said some nonsensical things, which I ignored. "It's Sophie, right?" Ethan said lightly, "She's been in quite a mess lately, don't you want to hear what happened?" "Not interested. Sophie's issues are nothing but related to Leo, and I don't want to hear either of their names." Ethan chuckled, "If you're not interested, I won't bother you. Life is pretty good like this." Jeff jumped into my arms, panting and calling out a couple of times. "Let's go, Daddy will take Jeff to eat something delicious." Ethan held Jeff tightly in his arms. I retorted, when did Jeff become your son? Always has been, Ethan smirked, after all, he's the dog I gave you. I was speechless, have some dignity. He teased softly, how can you have dignity and marry a wife? Before I could respond, he hurriedly hugged Jeff and slipped away. I watched his back, and suddenly felt a place in my heart warmed for a moment. After staying in the southern city for half a year, I received news that Leo's father was seriously ill. I'll accompany you back. Ethan booked 2 plane tickets and helped me carefully pack my luggage. The next morning, we rushed to the hospital in the northern city, but we were still a step too late. Leo's father had passed away. I felt a bit sad, and Ethan held me in his arms. It's okay, Uncle will be fine over there. Bang. The loud sound of the door slamming interrupted our conversation. Leo stood at the doorway, his eyes bloodshot. His expression was fierce as he rushed in and punched Ethan. Ethan was caught off guard and fell to the ground. He rubbed his bruised face and let out a sneer. Ethan, how dare you? Leo shouted like a madman. Leo, are you crazy? I helped Ethan up and wiped his cheek. I asked with concern, are you okay? Ethan leaned against me, Rachel, it hurts so much. I glared at Leo in anger, apologize. Apologize? Why should I apologize? Rachel, at first I thought your elopement was some kind of trick, but I didn't expect you to have been colluding with Ethan behind my back all along. Leo's words were sharp, and I was furious beyond control. He continued, Rachel, you really are something. You turned me into a joke in North City just to elope with this guy. I truly misjudged you. I rushed forward and slapped him hard. He was momentarily stunned by my blow. I stared intensely at this utterly unfamiliar man before me. Leo, clean up your mouth. I, Rachel, have never done anything to wrong you in my life. But now I see you with Ethan. Do you dare say you didn't leave me for him? Ethan stood up and, in a flash, threw a punch back. Leo was knocked to the ground, gasping for breath. He looked down at Leo with disdain and said, Leo, you really are Sophie's loyal dog. Whatever she says, you believe it. She claims Rachel has ulterior motives, that she's scheming to force you into marriage, and you actually believe her. You and Rachel grew up together, yet you refuse to trust her character. Later, you and Sophie became inseparable, yet you demanded Rachel not get close to any other men. Leo, all of this is just your possessiveness at play. You have no idea how much harm Rachel has suffered to become so disheartened that she chose to leave. Ethan then handed him a CD. This contains all the misdeeds Sophie has done. I hired a private investigator to keep an eye on her. To be honest, I can be quite petty. Seeing the misunderstandings between you and Rachel has made me very happy. I never intended to tell you the truth in this lifetime because I was afraid you would reconcile with Rachel, and she would soften and agree. But now it seems you and she have no chance anymore, so telling you the truth and causing you pain makes me even happier. After saying that, Ethan tightened his grip on my hand. I chose not to break free. Rachel, don't go. Leo's weak voice reached my ears. I closed my eyes. Ethan, take me away, I want to see Auntie, and then we'll go back to South City. Ethan's expression was as gentle as water. All right, I'll do as you say. After we walked out of the hospital room, Ethan was silent for a moment before finally speaking. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have hidden so many things from you for my own selfish reasons. You have the right to know everything. Now I'll tell you everything in detail. Ethan and I walked down the street as he slowly recounted. After I ran away from the wedding, Ethan hired a private detective to keep an eye on the Liu family's situation. At first, Leo spent his days in indulgence. What was Rachel to him? Good riddance. With her gone, I am free. Sophie smiled brightly. Congratulations to Leo for escaping the sea of troubles. The party lasted for several days, and he didn't even visit Leo's dad and mom. Leo's father was utterly disappointed, but he was his only son, and there was nothing he could do. Yet, after a few days, Leo appeared to be lost in thought. He returned to the Liu family and diligently went to work, taking on the responsibilities he should bear. No one knew what had happened in between. One time, Leo fell asleep in his office and suddenly woke up, shouting a person's name. Rachel. In the following days, he went to work as usual, but he seemed distracted. Leo's father was gravely ill, and Leo gradually began to take on the responsibilities of the Liu family. He was constantly shuttling between partners and shareholder meetings, utterly exhausted. Sophie visited him at the company a few times. He ate the bento that Sophie made, but after a few bites, he lost his appetite. Before long, his stomach issues flared up, and he went to the hospital. He has always been picky about food. He wouldn't eat the takeout brought by the nanny, nor the meals sent by Sophie. When I heard Ethan mention this, I felt a moment of daze. Ethan pressed his lips together. After all these years of cooking for him, your influence is everywhere in his life. Yes, I've known about Leo's picky eating habits since high school. So I took charge of his lunch. I always found various excuses to bring it to him. He once said that the meals I made were the best in the world. And I've been doing this for 10 years. It wasn't until Leo left you that he realized he couldn't bear to be without you. He would always unconsciously call your name. Ethan continued to speak eloquently. Later, Sophie learned that Leo had this heartache, and the cause was me. So she came to the southern city. Little did she expect to stumble upon a scene of me laughing and chatting with Ethan. She recorded it and sent it to Leo. Look, this is Rachel, fickle and flighty. She isn't worth you making a fool of yourself for her every day. Leo, wake up. When Leo saw this photo, he smashed several antique vases on the spot. He immediately planned to book a ticket to confront me. But he couldn't escape from North City. There were too many things waiting for him to handle. He could only work in a daze every day, not even seeing Sophie. Each day he would caress a photo on his desk. In the photo, the boy smiled brightly, making bunny ears behind the girl. Ethan scoffed at this point. It was only then that Leo might have realized that he liked you. But it was already too late. Finally, in front of Leo's father's grave, I bowed deeply. Leo's mother handled the aftermath with great strength. Rachel, it's okay. You can go back, don't worry about Auntie. It had been half a year since I last saw her, and her hair was completely gray. During this time, she had worried a lot about her wayward son and her husband who lay bedridden. Auntie, take care of yourself. She nodded and looked at Ethan. Kid, take good care of my daughter, don't let her get hurt again. Ethan replied solemnly, Auntie, I will. Mom, I'm leaving. I called her Mom. She was already in tears. Oh, good daughter, although I won't see the day you truly become my daughter, I sincerely hope that you will always be safe and happy in the future. After saying goodbye to Leo's mom with Ethan, we headed to the airport. At the last moment before boarding, I heard a familiar voice. Rachel. Leo's eyes were filled with tears, and he was so nervous that his lips trembled. Don't go, okay? I'm begging you. Ethan tightened his grip on my hand. Ethan, Leo, and I will sort things out, just wait for me. I reassured Ethan, making him believe that I wouldn't look back. Only then did Ethan let go of me. I'll wait for you. Leo and I found a quiet lounge. He sat on the sofa, looking worn out, his hair disheveled, and his eyes filled with pleading. Rachel, everything is my fault. He choked on his words, it's because I never believed in you. You know, I was controlled by my family since I was young, and I've had enough of being dominated. I thought you were in cahoots with them, that you were just like my parents. I know, Leo has grown up under strict education all his life. So what he longs for the most is freedom. His time with Sophie gave him that freedom. I shook my head, that's not a reason for you to hurt me. Leo, I loved you deeply. He gasped. I once loved you to the core, loved you so humbly like dust. I know you hated me because of Sophie's lies, but I thought you would at least have a shred of sincerity for me. For that shred of sincerity, I was willing to endure anything. But later I realized, the Leo who would protect me when we were kids may have long been dead. Rachel, please don't say that, I beg you. Leo, you clearly know that during my most painful years, the only ones who accompanied me were you and Lucky. But you killed him, and in doing so, you also killed yourself. When I said these words, I didn't expect to feel any emotion at all. No love, no hate, and indeed, I won't be hurt anymore. Rachel, can you give me another chance? I've just realized my true feelings. I have always loved you. It was my fault, everything is my fault. I can give you another Lucky, I can be your support, I can give you a home. With a thud, Leo actually knelt down. He had always looked down on others, indifferent and aloof, yet unexpectedly, one day he would kneel on the ground. But it was all too late. I once set aside my pride just to wait for him to turn back. But he never did. So now, I must look forward. Leo, let me go, because you do not deserve to have me. You will never deserve me. I returned to him the words he said to me at the engagement banquet. Leo's face was pale, and he clutched my sleeve. I shook him off and walked away briskly. Outside the door was Ethan, who had been waiting for a long time. I linked my arm with his. Leo's heart was like ashes. He trembled and asked, "Did you choose him?" Ethan scoffed, "Are you really going to choose a fickle man like you, who changes partners like the wind?" Leo, you really think too highly of yourself, no one should revolve around you endlessly. If you keep this up, don't force me to hate you. After saying this, I no longer looked at Leo's expression and boarded the plane with Ethan. Rachel, I will wait for you, I will always wait for you. Leo's voice trembled and was pitiful. It was nothing but a nauseating pretense of deep affection. Ethan sat beside me, just like on the flight to the southern city 6 months ago. This time, I leaned on his shoulder. Just before I was about to fall asleep in a daze, I murmured, "I want to believe you once, believe that you won't be the second Leo." In a sudden dream, my hand was tightly held by someone. That person whispered in my ear, "I have loved you for 10 years, how could I be cruel enough to become the second Leo?" Rachel, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I will give you a home, I will love you forever. I sweetly fell asleep, as if it were a beautiful dream. Extra. After Leo inherited the Liu family business, he was busier than ever. He had already learned of Sophie's underhanded tactics and declared that any company that dared to accept Sophie would be at odds with the Liu family. Sophie was completely unemployed in the North City, and she wanted to ask Leo for a chance. Leo looked at her with disgust. "I don't want your life, I've already been more than fair. Get out of my sight and don't let me see you again." Sophie cried out in anguish, "I just love you too much. I don't want to see you marry Rachel, you don't even like her. I could never like anyone who likes you, just get out." The bodyguard threw Sophie out. From then on, Sophie was completely out of touch, and no one knew where she went. But there was indeed no place for her in the North City. During his busy moments, Leo would secretly book a flight to the southern city. But he never dared to go, and the tickets all went to waste. Until one birthday, he mustered the courage and secretly arrived in the southern city. He secretly came near her house. But what met his eyes was indeed the girl playing and laughing with another man in the yard. Leo was driven nearly mad with jealousy. Clearly, all of this could have been his. Rachel should have been his. The corners of his eyes were red, but he didn't dare to disturb the girl. He didn't want Rachel to hate him. From then on, every month, he would secretly come to the southern city to catch a glimpse of the girl. The girl and that man were always very affectionate. It wasn't long before they got married. He secretly attended the wedding as well. He even stole a bouquet of flowers. He thought of it as a gift from the girl to him, Leo thought. Soon after, the girl became pregnant. 10 months later, she gave birth. A year later, it was the child's birthday party. 6 years later, the child started elementary school. Leo never married in his lifetime. Until the year he grew old and gray, the girl had also become an old lady. Once again, as he was about to return from the South City to the North City, Rachel called out to him. "All these years, it has always been you, right?" For the first time, Leo felt the same kind of helplessness he had in his youth. Ah, Ethan is indeed better than me, you two have been doing well all these years. Rachel nodded. The two of them fell into silence, neither of them speaking first. In the end, it was Leo who broke the silence. Rachel, I'm sorry. I have never made up for the hurt I caused you. Rachel quietly said, it doesn't matter anymore, it's all old news. Over these decades, many things can just drift away with the wind. Rachel smiled and said, thinking back on the things from my youth, those life and death dramas seem trivial now. I won't see you off, Ethan is still waiting for me to pick up the grandchild. Leo watched Rachel's departing figure and shed tears. Those were tears of regret. For decades, he has built a prison for himself, never accepting any woman's advances. It was only because he fantasized that if one day Ethan treated her poorly, he could take Rachel away. But Ethan never gave him that opportunity. From the very beginning, it was his mistake. He handed the chance over to someone else. Rachel, seeing you so happy in the second half of your life, I am content. Leo's voice was very soft, and Rachel couldn't hear it. But the wind did.